The diplomatic concourse of Station Elysium, 9 buzzed with the low hum of 100 alien languages filtered through translators. Massive viewports framed the swirling nebula outside, casting violet light across the polished floors. Today was First Contact Orientation Day for juvenile representatives, a carefully orchestrated event meant to introduce young members of various species to one another under strict supervision. The Apex Fong delegation arrived last. They entered in perfect formation. 6 towering adults, manes like burnished copper flowing down their backs, golden eyes scanning every shadow. At their center trotted 8 cubs, each the size of a large earth dog, already sporting the razor-edged claws and powerful jaws that would one day make them apex predators on their homeworld. Their tails lashed with barely contained energy. These were not pets. These were future hunters, raised from birth to understand dominance, territory, and the thrill of the chase. The moment the cubs stepped onto the concourse, chaos erupted. One cub snarled at a passing insectoid delegate. Another pounced on a floating holographic display, shredding it into sparking fragments. A third bowled over a small avian child, sending feathers flying. The adults tried to intervene with deep warning growls, but the cubs, overstimulated, territorial, and far from familiar ground, only grew more frantic. Their roars echoed off the bulkheads. Delegates backed away. Security drones hummed into position. The Apex Fong ambassador, a scarred female named Vara, bared her teeth in frustration. They sense threat everywhere, she rumbled to the human liaison. This environment is too open, too bright, too strange. They will not calm until hierarchy is reestablished. The human liaison, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Mara Lin, nodded calmly. She had read the briefing packets. Apex Fong juveniles required strict structure, clear dominance displays, ritualized combat, immediate correction of misbehavior. But she also knew something the briefing hadn't covered. Sometimes cubs just needed to play. I have an idea, Mara said quietly. May I try? Vara's eyes narrowed. If they draw blood, we will take it as a declaration of hostility. Understood. Mara walked to the center of the cleared space. The cubs had formed a loose circle now, backs arched, lips curled, growling at anything that moved. Security personnel tensed. Mara reached into the large satchel she always carried to these events. She pulled out a plain cardboard box. Nothing special, just a shipping container she'd requisitioned from stores that morning. She set it down, opened the flaps, and stepped back. Nothing happened at first. Then one cub, the boldest, a male with a distinctive white streak across his muzzle, tilted his head. His nostrils flared. Curiosity overrode aggression for a fraction of a second. He crept forward. The others watched. The white-streaked cub sniffed the box. Then, with exquisite caution, he placed one massive paw inside. The box tipped slightly. He froze. Then, very slowly, he climbed in. All 8 cubs stared. The white-streaked one poked his head out, ears flicking. He looked ridiculous. A half-ton predator crammed into a box barely big enough for his shoulders. A tiny, confused chirp escaped him. That did it. The second cub lunged, not at anyone, but at the box. He tried to shove his way in beside the first. They wrestled, growling playfully, tumbling out and then scrambling back inside. A third joined, then a fourth. Soon all 8 were fighting for space in the single inadequate box, tails lashing, mock-biting, purring in a deep, rumbling way that sounded suspiciously like laughter. The adults froze. Vara's jaw dropped. Mara wasn't finished. She pulled out a small laser pointer, the cheap kind sold in every station gift shop. She clicked it on. A bright red dot appeared on the deck plating. One cub's head snapped toward it. The dot danced. The cub pounced. Missed. The dot zipped away. Another pounce. The entire group erupted into frenzied pursuit. 8 apex predators, each capable of bringing down megafauna on their homeworld, chased a harmless red, in tight circles, sliding across the polished floor, crashing into one another, yowling with delight. Delegates who had backed to the walls began to chuckle. A few recorded on personal devices. Mara sat cross-legged on the floor and began to hum, an old earth lullaby her grandmother used to sing. Soft, repetitive, soothing. She didn't look directly at the cubs. She knew better than to challenge their eyes. Instead, she let the sound wash over them. One by one, the chases slowed. The cubs panted, tongues lolling. They drifted closer to Mara. The white-streaked one flopped down beside her with a heavy sigh, resting his massive head across her lap. His purr vibrated through her bones. Another curled against her back. A third draped himself over her legs like an oversized housecat. Within 10 minutes, all 8 cubs were piled around her in a warm, purring heap. The red dot still danced forgotten on the ceiling. The cardboard box lay on its side, one flap torn. Vara approached slowly, claws clicking on the deck. "How?" she asked, voice hushed with something close to awe. "We teach them strength. We teach them to dominate. We teach them never to show vulnerability." "How did you make them?" "This." Mara stroked the white-streaked cub's mane gently. "On my world," she said, "we have animals very much like your young. Big cats, wolves, bears, fierce hunters. But we also discovered something thousands of years ago. Play is not weakness. Play is practice. Play is bonding. Play is how trust is built when words aren't enough." She looked up at Vara. "Your cubs were scared. Not of us, of the unknown. They needed to feel safe before they could be strong. Sometimes the fastest way to establish hierarchy isn't through force. It's through joy." Vara stared at the sleeping pile of cubs. One had begun to knead Mara's suit with his claws, a behavior usually reserved for mothers. "We have no word for this," Vara said slowly. "This gentle dominance. This victory without blood." Mara smiled. "We call it being silly, or sometimes just being human." The ambassador was silent for a long moment. Then she lowered herself to the deck, something no Apex Fong adult did lightly, and rested her chin near the cub pile. "Teach us," she said. "Teach us this human thing, so that our young may know both strength and happiness." Mara nodded. She reached into her satchel again and pulled out a small feathered wand toy on a string. "Lesson 1, she said. "Sometimes the greatest hunt is the one that never ends." She flicked the wand. A red feather danced. 8 sets of golden eyes snapped open. 8 tails began to twitch. And in the heart of the diplomatic concourse, under the watchful gaze of a dozen species, 8 apex predators learned how to play like children. The orientation session was supposed to last 2 hours. It stretched to 5. By the end, every delegate had gathered in a loose circle, watching in quiet fascination as Mara demonstrated more human rituals. She taught them peekaboo with a blanket. The cubs went wild trying to ambush her from under it. She showed them how to roll a ball with their noses instead of claws. Less destruction, more coordination. She even sang silly nursery rhymes, substituting roar for twinkle in the lyrics, which sent the cubs into fits of rumbling giggles. The Apex Fong adults tried, awkwardly at first, to imitate her. Vara herself batted at the laser dot once, missed spectacularly, and let out a startled huff that might have been embarrassment. The cubs pounced on her immediately, turning their ambassador into a living jungle gym. No one laughed louder than Vara. When the session finally ended, the cubs refused to leave Mara's side. They followed her to the airlock, tails high, purring non-stop. Security had to gently herd them back to their parents. Vara lingered. "We will request a permanent cultural exchange," she said. "Your people will come to our world. You will teach our dens these games. In return, we will teach your young our ways. The true hunt, the silent stalk, the pride's unbreakable bond." Mara inclined her head. "We accept." As the Apex Fong delegation departed, the white-streaked cub broke formation one last time. He trotted back to Mara, pressed his broad forehead against her chest in a gesture of deep trust, then scampered after his kin. The concourse fell quiet. Acrylic's delegate, the insectoid whose display had been shredded, approached Mara cautiously. "Your species is perplexing," it clicked. "You turn predators into kittens with paper and light. How is this possible?" Mara shrugged, gathering her scattered toys. We've spent millennia figuring out how to live with creatures that could eat us. We learned that fear makes teeth sharper, but kindness makes loyalty deeper. Turns out that works on just about everyone. Word spread quickly. Within weeks, requests flooded the human embassy. Could humans please send play instructors to apex fong litters? Could human nursery teachers visit breeding dens? Could joint juvenile programs be established? And slowly, across the stars, something unprecedented began. Apex fong cubs grew up knowing both the thrill of the hunt and the safety of silliness. They learned to dominate without cruelty, to lead without terror. Their adults, once rigid and unyielding, started incorporating human breaks, short sessions of unstructured play, into training regimens. Purring became as common in dens as roaring. Other species took notice. Soon there were stories. The human who calmed a room full of razor-clawed juveniles with nothing but a box and a song. The ambassador who actually laughed, in public for the first time in recorded history. And in quiet moments, when the galaxy's predators gathered and spoke of the soft-skinned bipeds from Sol, they no longer spoke only of human ingenuity or endurance. They spoke of joy. They spoke of trust earned without bloodshed. They spoke of a species that looked at the universe's deadliest children and said, simply, let's play, because humanity had long ago learned the hardest truth of all. The strongest claws in the galaxy aren't made of keratin. They're made of cardboard, red dots, and the unbreakable will to make a frightened heart feel safe. And that, in the end, was the most terrifying power of all.